You think that flawless bite of luxury sushi is a culinary masterpiece. It is a lie. You are swallowing a beautifully orchestrated myth subsidized by psychological torture, ruthless oceanic warfare, and massive global fraud. Keep watching, because this bloody reality will shatter your illusion forever. Imagine sitting in a dimly lit, Michelin-starred dining room. The ambience is intoxicating. You are about to pay a small fortune for a single bite of deep ruby flesh resting perfectly on a pedestal of warm rice. You close your eyes, savor the so-called notes of the sea, and believe you have just tasted the pinnacle of human culture. But what if I told you that you are swallowing a beautifully orchestrated lie? What sits delicately on your porcelain plate is not merely dinner. It is the bloody, ruthless, and hyper-optimized climax of a shadow world you were never meant to see. You are standing at the edge of a multi-hundred-billion-dollar matrix, blindingly unaware of the lethal depths, the cold-blooded psychology, and the absolute desperation required to bring that single bite to your lips. Today, we are tearing down the velvet curtains. We are going to expose the hidden cost of culinary supremacy. At Bluefin 04 warmly welcomes you to this journey into the abyss of our global food chain. If you want to keep unraveling the dark, fascinating truths hidden just beneath the surface of everyday life, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Your support is the raw fuel that drives this channel to dig deeper and bring you the stories they do not want you to hear. Now, let us descend into the freezing, unforgiving waters of the Pacific to meet the undisputed sovereign of the ocean, the Pacific bluefin tuna. We are not talking about the tragic, lifeless gray mush entombed in a tin sitting in the back of your pantry. No, we are talking about a living, breathing torpedo of pure, predatory muscle. A beast that navigates the pitch-black, icy depths with the terrifying grace of a submerged Ferrari. During the dead of winter, when the oceans turn into a liquid graveyard, this titan bulks up, layering its flesh with premium, marbled fat just to survive the agonizing cold. Hunting these giants is not a fishery. It is a high-stakes war where a single prime specimen can fetch the price of a luxury estate. But pulling it from the abyss and bringing it to a Tokyo sushi counter is a brutal saga that separates the masters from the mere mortals. In this ruthless supply chain, there are two distinct paths. First, you have the industrial longline sweepers, massive factory ships that treat the ocean like a spreadsheet, dropping miles of indiscriminate hooks to maximize volume and bleed the sea dry. But the true elite, the purveyors of absolute perfection, rely on the artisanal handline masters. Why? Because of a silent, invisible killer that destroys profits and ruins flesh: lactic acid. When a leviathan like the bluefin is hooked on a commercial longline, it realizes it is trapped. It panics. It fights for grueling, terrifying hours in the dark. That sheer, agonizing stress floods its mighty muscles with lactic acid, literally cooking and degrading the premium ruby flesh from the inside out, turning a $100,000 treasure into sour, cloudy garbage. It is a massive loss born entirely of fear. The solitary handline masters understand that speed is not just money, it is respect. They hook the beast and haul it upward with superhuman urgency. In a matter of minutes, before the fish even comprehends its impending doom, they execute a flawless, surgical kill. A spike to the brain, a rapid bleed out, a wire threaded down the spinal cord. In seconds, the nervous system is silenced. No stress, no acid, just absolute, tragic perfection. From that silent death, the carcass is thrust into the mother of all global trading floors, the Toyosu Fish Market in Tokyo. Forget the frantic shouting of Wall Street. This is a billion-dollar coliseum of flesh and ice where the tension is so thick it could choke you. If you look closely, you will notice the auction floor is painted a very specific, almost toxic shade of green. Do not mistake that for an architectural accident. It is calculated psychological warfare. That sterile green creates a jarring visual contrast, a backdrop designed to manipulate the human brain, making the exposed red flesh of the severed tuna pop with an artificial vibrancy. It is god-tier, subliminal marketing. The buyers walking across this green stage are grizzled veterans, men who hold the weight of entire culinary empires in their calloused hands. They do not guess. They wield a curved metal instrument called a sashikaji, driving it into a coarse sample of the severed tail. They roll the chilled flesh between their fingertips, feeling the microscopic elasticity of the fat, literally reading the entire, brutal life history of the fish through pure touch. And when the auction finally drops, the room falls into a heavy, hypnotic silence broken only by the auctioneer's rhythmic chant. The buyers do not shout. They communicate in tairi, a covert, lightning-fast dialect of hand signs that looks like the silent warfare of culinary billionaires. A subtle flick of the wrist, a hidden thumb, and $100,000 transaction is locked away into the cold air. The king of the ocean is sold, entombed in crushed ice, and shipped across the globe before you have even taken your first sip of morning coffee. Yet, while the auction Leviathan embarks on its final journey wrapped in frost, it is destined to meet a companion whose creation demands an equally psychotic level of obsession. If you ask the average consumer what defines world-class sushi, they will predictably point to the fish, remaining blissfully ignorant of the fact that the soul of the bite does not swim in the ocean. It grows in the mud. The masters know that the fish is merely the guest, but the rice, the sherry, is the absolute master of the house. To the uninitiated, rice is just a bland, starchy filler, an afterthought boiling away in a countertop appliance. To the elite Itami, it is a living, breathing canvas that requires a terrifying, borderline obsessive mastery of temperature, humidity, and time. They do not just cook rice, they engineer it. The grains themselves are subjected to a rigorous selection process, sourced from specific ancestral paddies where the mineral content of the water is heavily scrutinized. But the true dark magic begins in the fermentation, the sharp, slightly brown tint of high-end. Sherry is not a stylistic choice. It is the fingerprint of a kazu, a deeply complex, red sake-lees vinegar. This is not the harsh, transparent acidic liquid sitting on grocery store shelves. True akazu is aged in shadowy, temperature-controlled wooden vats for up to 10 years. Over a decade, it slowly oxidizes, transforming from a pale byproduct into a thick, umami-rich elixir that smells faintly of dark chocolate and ancient earth. When the freshly steamed rice meets this liquid gold, the chef engages in a frantic, violent ballet. The rice must be folded and aerated with a wooden paddle, cut at precise angles to coat every single microscopic grain in the acidic fat without bruising or breaking a single one. An assistant stands by, furiously fanning the mixture to force the evaporation of excess moisture, bringing the sherry to the exact temperature of human skin. This is the golden rule of the high-end counter. The rice must mimic the warmth of a living body. If it drops even a few degrees below that threshold, it dies. The starches crystallize, the texture tightens into a repulsive paste, and the delicate harmony with the chilled fish is completely shattered. There is a reason why a true master will discard entire batches of rice throughout a dinner service. They are not chasing a recipe. They are chasing an ephemeral, fleeting window of perfection that lasts only minutes. It is a grueling, invisible war against thermodynamics, fought quietly behind the counter while you marvel at the color of your tuna. But even the most immaculate marriage of ocean muscle and breathing grain can be instantly assassinated by the very elements we blindly trust to elevate them. As you sit at that pristine counter, you likely reach for the sharp, vibrant green paste and the dark, salty liquid provided to you, entirely unaware that you have been conditioned to accept a massive, global culinary fraud. Let us address the burning elephant in the room, the wasabi. I can say with near absolute certainty that 99% of the people on this planet have never actually tasted real wasabi. That harsh, sinus-clearing napalm that comes in plastic tubes and cheap foil packets is a chemical lie. It is nothing more than European horseradish, mustard powder, and artificial green dye pumped out by industrial factories to simulate an aristocratic experience for the masses. Real Wasabia japonica is a botanical prima donna, one of the most notoriously difficult and expensive crops on the face of the earth to cultivate. It refuses to grow in standard soil. It demands to be semi-submerged in pure, icy, continuously flowing mountain spring water, shaded from direct sunlight, and left alone for up to 3 agonizing years just to yield a single knobby rhizome. When a master chef grates this precious root against a traditional sharkskin paddle, the friction ruptures the cellular walls, releasing highly volatile compounds. The flavor is not a brutal assault on your nose. It is a delicate, floral, and fiercely complex heat that blooms in your mouth and vanishes like a ghost. But here is the cruel catch. That flavor degrades and dies completely within 15 minutes of grating. It cannot be bottled. It cannot be preserved. It demands to be consumed in the absolute present. And then there is the soy sauce, the dark blood that runs through the veins of Japanese cuisine. What you buy in the supermarket is often a chemically hydrolyzed sludge, artificially colored, and injected with corn syrup to mimic depth. True, artisanal shoyu is a testament to the slow, relentless march of time. It is brewed in massive, centuries-old cedar barrels called kyoke. These giant wooden vessels are porous, acting as living habitats for generations of wild microbes and ancestral yeast strains that have embedded themselves deep in the wood over hundreds of years. The soybeans and wheat are left to ferment in these barrels for years, exposed to the shifting seasons, breathing in the air of the brewery. The resulting liquid is thick, intensely fragrant, and possesses a savory depth that cannot be replicated by modern science. It is not just a condiment. It is a liquid history of the very building it was born in, a quiet rebellion against the cheap, accelerated pace of the modern world. To wield these volatile ingredients without destroying their fragile essence requires a human vessel who has been systematically broken and rebuilt by an unforgiving doctrine. You look at the man standing behind the wooden counter, clad in a pristine white jacket, moving with the fluid, effortless grace of an orchestra conductor, and you see an artist. What you do not see are the decades of silent, agonizing subjugation that forged him. The path of the Atami, the sushi master, is not a career choice. It is a psychological surrender. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, culinary school degrees, and viral fame, the traditional apprenticeship is a brutal, anachronistic cult of discipline that actively seeks to crush the ego of anyone arrogant enough to walk through its doors. When a young apprentice begins, they are entirely stripped of their identity. For the first few years, they are not allowed anywhere near the fish. Their existence is reduced to the lowest, most humiliating forms of physical labor. They scrub the floors until their knuckles bleed, scour the heavy iron pots, and take out the garbage in freezing rain. They are treated as invisible, entirely unworthy of learning the secrets of the house. This is not hazing. It is a calculated psychological crucible designed to test their absolute devotion. If you cannot perfectly execute the menial task of cleaning a drain, how can you be trusted with a piece of flesh that costs more than a car? If they survive the years of scrubbing, they are finally permitted to touch the rice. But this is not a promotion. It is a new form of torture. They will spend another grueling half-decade just learning to wash, soak, and steam the grain. Their hands are constantly submerged in freezing water in the winter and scorched by boiling steam in the summer. They are screamed at for adding a millimeter too much water or for breaking a single grain. The hierarchy is absolute, bordering on dictatorial. You do not ask questions. You do not offer suggestions. You observe the master in terrifying silence, attempting to absorb his unspoken knowledge through pure, frantic repetition. It can take a decade before the master finally places a knife in their heavily calloused, scarred hands and allows them to slice the fish. By the time they stand before you, offering that perfect piece of nigiri, they have sacrificed their youth, their personal lives, and their physical comfort. The flawless, seemingly simple bite you are about to consume is heavily subsidized by the invisible currency of human suffering and decades of blind obedience. And so, after decades of human sacrifice and the violent harvesting of the abyss, the culmination of this sprawling, invisible empire is finally placed before you. The dining room falls utterly quiet as the master delicately forms the sherry, drapes the ruby flesh of the bluefin over it, paints it with a single, precise brushstroke of aged soy, and sets it on your porcelain pedestal. This is the climax. The moment where the lethal hunt, the bloody auction, the ancient wood, and the broken apprentice all converge into a single entity roughly the size of your thumb. But the master does not step back to let you admire his work. He watches you, his eyes intensely critical, expecting you to act. Because in this high-stakes cathedral of gastronomy, there is an unwritten, unforgiving law, the 10-second rule. From the exact moment the master's fingers release the nigiri, a microscopic countdown begins. The temperature of the fish is rising. The precise warmth of the rice is escaping into the cold air of the room. Gravity is slowly compressing the aerated grains. If you stop to take a photograph, to chat with your companion, or to merely hesitate, you are actively destroying the masterpiece. You are disrespecting the entire bloody odyssey that brought it to your plate. You must pick it up immediately, invert it so only the flesh touches your tongue, and consume it in one continuous, reverent motion. When you close your eyes and the bite collapses in your mouth, you are not just tasting a pleasant meal. You are experiencing a violent, beautiful collision of nature and human obsession. You taste the sheer terror and the icy depths of the Pacific Ocean. You taste the slow, invisible creep of time inside a centuries-old cedar barrel. You taste the raw, bleeding knuckles of a young man who gave up his 20s to learn how to wash rice. It is an overwhelming rush of umami, fat, and acid that peaks for a glorious, blinding second before fading into a lingering ghost of flavor, leaving you chasing the high all over again. This is the true illusion of luxury. We tell ourselves we are paying for premium ingredients, but the dark reality is that we are purchasing a meticulously crafted myth. We are paying to consume the absolute limits of human desperation, disguised as a polite, bite-sized piece of art. Thank you for surviving this descent into the culinary shadows with me. If this journey shifted the way you look at the plate in front of you, prove it by hitting that subscribe button and leaving a comment down below. At Nluvuong04 relies on your curiosity to keep ripping the blindfolds off these hidden worlds. Until the next deep dive, remember, nothing is as simple as it seems, especially the things we devour. PHNKT. To consume high-end sushi is to consume a paradox. We sit at pristine, quiet counters, expecting an experience of ultimate refinement and serene beauty, completely shielded from the chaotic, grueling warfare that forged it. As we have explored, the flawless bite of nigiri is not merely a combination of expensive fish and cooked rice. It is the apex of human stubbornness. It is the result of forcing thermodynamics to bow to the will of an obsessively engineered grain. The resurrection of ancient traditions breathing inside centuries-old cedar barrels, and the brutal, systematic breaking of an apprentice's ego until nothing remains but sheer, uncompromising dedication to the craft. This culinary masterpiece is an illusion of absolute simplicity built upon decades of invisible suffering, relentless repetition, and a terrifying reverence for volatile ingredients that wither in a matter of minutes. When we pay for this level of culinary art, we are not buying a meal. We are purchasing the fleeting climax of 100 hidden sacrifices. We are consuming time itself, the years aged into the soy sauce, the decades stripped from the chef's youth, and the fleeting seconds before the thermal harmony of the bite collapses forever. Ultimately, this descent into the shadows of the sushi counter reveals a raw truth. True luxury is never peaceful. It is born from an agonizing pursuit of perfection, crystallized into a single, profound moment that vanishes almost as soon as it touches your tongue. The ultimate truth hidden behind the sushi counter is that true mastery and profound value are never born from shortcuts or instant gratification. They are forged in the unseen, unglamorous crucible of absolute discipline. The outcomes that appear the most effortless and beautiful always require the most agonizing, invisible preparation. You can apply this philosophy by shifting how you approach both consumption and your personal ambitions. As a consumer, practice radical mindfulness and gratitude. Stop rushing through experiences and begin looking past the surface to acknowledge the hidden labor, history, and human effort behind the everyday goods, services, and art you enjoy. As an individual striving for success, embrace the grueling, repetitive fundamentals of your own craft. In a modern culture completely obsessed with quick life hacks and overnight viral fame, choose to be the apprentice scrubbing the floors. Commit to the absolute mastery of the small, seemingly insignificant details, understanding that your greatest, most effortless-looking achievements will only emerge after you have submitted yourself to the quiet, invisible grind. Now that you know the brutal discipline and extreme obsession required to create this experience, I have a simple question for you. Does knowing the intense sacrifice behind high-end sushi make you want to try it more, or does it change your appetite for it entirely? Please leave a comment below to share your perspective so we can all discuss and learn from each other's views. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want to keep ripping the blindfolds off the hidden worlds around us, please hit that subscribe button. Your support is what gives this channel the motivation to keep creating these high-quality explorations.